I am very excited that we are starting to see finally a dovetailing of interests in the legal sector between what the public needs and what lawyers want. Because traditionally, it's just been what lawyers want, right? That's one of the either the benefits or the downsides of a self-governing profession, self-regulating profession. We are seeing to a greater extent than ever the voice of the public, the voice of the people, the voice of clients, and they are really making changes. And lawyers, especially younger ones, are listening.
How do you interact with your clients? Is it a clinical, business only relationship? Could you be more empathetic with your clients? Should you? What is the true value of empathy with your client, both to the client and your business? Our guest this week is Jordan Furlong of Law 21. Jordan is a legal sector analyst and advisor who's deeply invested in a better future for the legal profession and the society it serves. Jordan joins me for a fantastic and lofty conversation about the ways that attorneys are trained to approach clients, care about them and their needs, and view their role in their clients' lives. Lawyers are trained to be emotionally divorced practitioners of the law. We're trained not to display empathy for our clients and to remain neutral and professionally distant. Empathy is often seen as irrelevant or a waste of time. But Jordan argues that we should let those empathetic conversations be our guide as counselors and build the trust with our clients. We are both a problem solver and an anxiety reducer for our clients. We discuss ideas on how we can teach the next wave of attorneys to rethink empathy and a general willingness to do things differently. We discuss the value of failure and how it's hard to accept failure in the legal field, even when innovating. It takes courage to be willing to fail, and taking small risks is the only way forward. This is a great chat, and we could all get a lot out of approaching our work this way. Let's get to it. I'm John Strohmeyer, and this is the 5-Star Counsel Podcast. The market for legal services is shifting, and lawyers who don't adapt will be left behind. This podcast gives you a competitive edge in today's market by sharing the client service lessons you probably didn't learn in law school or in law practice. Let's start the show. Hey 5-Star listeners, before we start, I want to tell you about our amazing sponsor, Smith AI. Smith AI is a virtual receptionist service for small businesses with a specialty in working with solo and small law firms. I signed up with them within weeks of starting my firm because they are affordable for even the smallest solo practice. Their friendly receptionists respond to potential clients in Spanish or English, screen and schedule new leads, and can even take payments. And now they're answering calls 24 hours a day. So even when you're asleep, they're still working. Even beyond the phone, they've got live agents and chatbots ready to capture leads on your website, by text, and by Facebook Messenger. Smith's friendly gatekeepers can staff your front line so you can work uninterrupted. You can finally have the peace of mind that while you're working, you're not missing out on future work. Plans start at just $70 a month for calls and $100 a month for chats. Smith AI is offering a free trial, and our podcast listeners get an extra $100 discount code with promo code 5-star. That's FIVESTAR. Sign up and learn more at www.smith.ai. Don't let another day go by. Try Smith AI. Jordan, it's so great to finally have you here.
John, thank you very much. It's an absolute pleasure to be here today.
Jordan, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on was a few months ago, you had written something very interesting that when I was preparing for this today, I could not remember what the exact topic was. And so I went back and I was just browsing through the Law 21 blog, and sure enough, there were still more than enough interesting topics to come back on. And really what it focused on was, here we are in May of 2022, and the last two articles you had published were all about being intentional, not only with where you set up your office, but what we're doing for clients. And as we were chatting before we got started, we were talking really about being intentional and choosing what the future looks like because, surprise, the future is now. And with that kind of wind up, Jordan, what should we be talking about today?
John, what I think we want to be talking about as people who are interested in improving the experience of delivering legal services and the experience of receiving legal services. And I think that second part is not given enough attention by the legal profession. We spend a whole lot of time focused on what you might call the supply side, right? How do I learn more law? How do I get more of this? How do I do this? And it's very kind of me. And we don't think about others and about clients and about the stakeholders in our clients' lives as much as we should. And one of the things I like to talk to lawyers about in this regard is to say, you know what, sometimes you need to kind of forget you're a lawyer in a sense, right? Not for very long, but in the sense that the client doesn't particularly care that you're a lawyer or that you know about the law or any of these things. All that matters to them is that you are a problem solver and you are an anxiety reducer, right? And because fundamentally, the only reason they're in front of you is that someone said, you got a legal problem, go see a lawyer. Right? If someone had said you got a medical problem, they go through the doctor's door. If they were told you got a business problem, they go through the accountant's door, whatever, right? But what matters and what's in common to the lawyer and the accountant and the doctor and everybody else is that there's a person in front of you who has a problem and who is in usually great turmoil. A lot of they've kind of lost their peace of mind in a lot of ways. And what I say to lawyers is, in this regard, you only got two jobs. You got to help the person and you got to solve the problem. And that's it, but you got to do both. Right? And we don't do this often enough. Again, this comes back to intentionality. We are so habitual in the law and we're just so accustomed to, oh, here comes a person carrying a legal problem. I care about the problem. I'm so good at solving problems. I'm so good at this. I'll fix the problem. And the person, as often as not, they're the ones who need more fixing. They're the ones who are on a journey towards their solution, but they need help, they need management, they need accompaniment. That is what we do very poorly in the law. And if you're looking as a lawyer for some kind of, where's my distinctiveness, where's my advantage, then being intentional about that, paying attention to the person and helping to manage and guide them towards their solution. Because I'll tell you, very few lawyers do that well, if at all. And I think that's the opportunity that you can really grab and run with.
Yeah, and so there seems to be a lot in help the person. And I'll tell you, when I first hear you say that, my thought is, my God, Jordan, I am not a psychologist, a psychotherapist, whatever that professional term is. Can you maybe put a little bit more on what does help the person look like that isn't, and I agree with, solve the problem. I call it typically moving the needle
Mhm.
for somebody.
Yeah.
What does that, give me an example or two of what that could be in a reasonable expectation for a lawyer who's not going to be the psychotherapist or the
Mhm.
grief counselor.
Yeah, absolutely. And lawyers, I think, generally speaking, make poor psychotherapists and grief counselors. And and part of the reason is that we are actively discouraged during our formative years from developing empathy and from showing empathy and from showing any degree of emotional connection with people. I remember in law school we were constantly told, do not become a dupe of your client, whatever that means. And I think we are driven in the opposite direction of that. So even coming back towards the way normal, ordinary people would react and deal with others, that would be a step forward. But in terms of specific client interactions, again, when we have oftentimes the first interactions with the client, and setting aside for a moment all the pre-meeting interactions, every time the client interacts with your presence, whether it is your website or your phone message or the person who meets them at reception, whatever, these are all separate impressions that you are giving, whether you realize it or not. But focusing on the actual first meeting and subsequent meetings with the client, what we tend to do as lawyers is we kind of focus on gathering the facts and figuring out the law stuff. And what I want to encourage lawyers to do is listen more, ask some more questions. Okay, someone comes in and I'm having a dispute with my brother, right? Because he and I are having a disagreement about how to handle the estate of our late mother, and this is what's going on. And what you need to spend some time with is, so tell me about your mom a little bit. When did she pass away? Oh, 4 months ago. I'm so sorry. That must be really hard. I lost my dad a year and a half ago. And so tell me a bit about your brother. How long have you obviously been siblings for years? Who's older? Who's younger? Right? And the kind of stuff I'm talking about, a lot of lawyers are like, that's irrelevant. That's wasting time. That's just whatever, whatever, right? And and I think that's precisely the wrong reaction because you need to understand where the person's coming from and where they are. Because as much as anything else, especially for lawyers, we don't fully appreciate that it isn't just a legal problem, it's a life problem. It's a life situation. And they want to come out of this recovered, recuperated, made as whole as they can be. And that can only start when someone actually, sincerely listens to them, responds to them in that kind of a sense. And I think, again, that is something I really wish we would do more as lawyers. It would make such a difference to our clients.
Right. And I really like this, the building the connection, building rapport with people. Not all it's something that in some of the sales training I've done, specifically thinking about the Sandler sales method where they have their own procedure for how you move from one step to the next. The first thing they want you doing and they focused on is building rapport with people,
Hmm.
because if you know who they are, obviously it ensures that you know why they are there and what you can do, what is the real issue. Again, people don't come to me as an estate planner because, my God, I just don't have any documents, and I just have this, burning hole in my life for 3 inches of neatly presented paper. They know down the line, vaguely, they're going to die and something will happen. And really what they want is not a mess later. And then pulling out, okay, well, what could that mess look like? And who are the people that are going to be involved? As I talk to a lawyer who I work with on mutual clients frequently this morning, that the mutual client in this case, I had helped the mother and father. They had a special needs daughter. This other lawyer was helping special needs daughter and the family with the guardianship, making sure we understood how that all worked so that it fits together. Because again, it's not a problem. It's their daughter who will need to live on and be protected, even with, in this case, mother and father who have zero concern or zero worry that the other two children will ensure that special needs daughter is taken care of.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And the beauty of that kind of approach as well, when you're engaging with them and said, "Tell me about your daughter," and tell me, obviously I'm interested in her condition and what is it that's causing this issue. So tell me, what are the things she loves to do, right? What are the things that really bring her joy, and what are some of the challenges you've had? And part of if you need a clinical professional reason to do that, it is simply this: that if you show that you care about their situation, about their overall world that they're living in, they're more likely to trust you. They're more likely to share with you important information that they otherwise might hold back. And by the way, we have so many built-in systems in the law to prevent our clients from sharing important stuff with us, right? I mean, the lack of empathy and the kind of coldness and the brusqueness and all this kind of stuff. But even especially like the billable hour. I often say to clients, one of the things the billable hour does is sorry, I say to lawyers, one of the things that the billable hour does, it makes your clients afraid to call you. And they may have something they're not sure about, and they think it's probably a small thing, and you're thinking, oh my God, that's huge. You've got to tell me that, right? But it's like, oh well, if I pick up the phone, the meter's going to start running, et cetera, et cetera. So again, as a lawyer, look around. Where are the barriers? What are the doors that you are unconsciously slamming in the face of your clients and potential clients? Open them up and say, hey, come on in. Once again, the idea is break out of the habits, break out of the old ways of doing things, try something different. It's hard for lawyers to do that. I get it. But you've got to try doing it different, at least some of the time with some of the clients.
Exactly. And I'm so glad you hit on, I'd written down wasting time when you'd mentioned that earlier, because once we're, again, launching into my anti-billable hours, not only does it devalue what we do, but exactly what you say, we're in the mindset of if I'm not solving their problem, I'm somehow not helping them. And in so many cases, people just want to tell their story
Yeah.
and they want to be heard. It's not just poke here, and if that hurts, we will go in and solve it.
Yeah.
Just chatting a little bit. I've had issues with my foot for the last year and a half, and the podiatrist I went to was talking to me about my running and what I did. and it gives her a better context for what I'm doing. The physical therapist did the same thing, like, how do you actually run? It wasn't just jump up there, does this feel better, but let's figure out how you're actually using your foot as part of your running to make sure it fits better. And you just, again, you feel heard
Mm,
for somebody and not just being another number.
yeah. Exactly right. It makes a huge difference. And if we would teach this more in law school, if we would emphasize this more in bar training and early years formation, it would make such a difference. I'm hoping that's where we're heading sooner than later.
Right. And, I mean, to jump into that, you're in Canada, so the training there is different.
Mhm.
Here we just have 3 years of mostly classroom instruction, and then you're thrust into, well, why don't you know how to do this?
Mm,
What I look for and what I really want more is, law students who are working for me, you're coming in earlier, learning what we do so you know from the ground up.
mm,
You've seen this, but also the pro bono opportunities where you can go and do the tax return prep for low income people, because then you're seeing, dollars and cents actually making an impact on people and what
mm.
you can and should be doing.
Yeah. No, absolutely. One of the things I've become very interested in recently is reforms to the lawyer licensing process. And one of the most interesting areas for that right now is in the state of Oregon, which is the process potentially of expanding the range of opportunities or range of options available to you to become licensed as a lawyer. Because right now, in every state, with one exception, you have to pass a bar exam in order to become a lawyer. The one exception is if it's a minor one and it's in New Hampshire. If you graduated from a particular program at New Hampshire's law school, you don't need to write the bar exam. Oregon, I think, was inspired by that. And they've been inspired, I think, a little bit by the apprenticeship system we have here in Canada, whereby after finishing your law degree and passing your bar admission course, you also have to spend anywhere from 6 to 12 months, depending on the jurisdiction, in a supervised practice in a legal workplace of some kind. What Oregon is saying is, okay, in addition to the bar exam, we're not getting rid of the bar exam, yet,
Yet.
and and there's many issues with the bar exam, but that's a whole other conversation. We are going to introduce two new pathways, and one of them is we're going to kind of follow the Canadian model. We're going to give you the apprenticeship opportunity, work with an existing experienced lawyer for X number of hours, and once you've done that, we think you're fine. You don't have to run the bar exam, which of course makes massive sense because you're going to learn more studying and writing a 3 or 4 or 6 hour exam or billing, not even billing, working 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 hours on behalf of clients. Obviously it's the latter, but the other opportunity they're providing is to gain this experience in law school through clinics and clinical courses and externships for precisely what you're talking about. Give people the opportunity, especially for the low income, marginalized, racialized groups that wind up most often in these kinds of clinics because they don't even bother going to lawyers, right? And you've got a chance both to learn the craft and to learn the practice of law, but you're doing good and you're helping people who otherwise couldn't be helped. I would love to see that catch on in other states as soon as possible.
Right. And it's the sort of thing of, when I look back, both being a Boy Scout as well as being an adult volunteer with the Boy Scouts, the idea behind a lot of it and what kind of is following along here is it's giving people a chance to fail in a safe space.
Mhm.
Gain the experience, because good judgment only comes from having made bad decisions. And I know there's a better way to phrase that, but we want, young lawyers to make decisions, see the consequences, but without affecting somebody else or affecting a client. I think about it, I draw down more and more. I want to do, more and more of less and less.
Mm.
Why? It's I'm good at a few things, and even talking to a client earlier today, John, could you help us with this partnership agreement? Yes, I could, but there are about 7 different partners, and you're right on the edge of where I'm top 3 in what I can do, and just kind of an also ran.
Mhm.
And I'd rather not be an also ran. I'd rather that client go and, it's not fair for me to take money when I'm not the best option, even if I already know some of the details. I'd much rather you go
Yeah.
elsewhere, get it done by somebody who's going to be very good at this. And again, like I'm at the point in my career, I don't want to be having those learning experiences on something that's not right in the middle of the fairway of what I do.
Yeah, absolutely. And you need that kind of supervision. It's really hard. Law is a tough there's so many things you're learning as a new lawyer. The practical aspects of law, and the application of law to real life situations, but also the business of law and the politics of offices and and oftentimes moving out of the academic environment into a completely different one. It's an overload of information, and to set people out on their own without any guidance is, I think, irresponsible in a lot of ways. So yeah, we need that level of supervision. We need that level of mentorship that we don't have right now.
Right. And I mean, here we are. What do we do? How can we actually build this in? Look, one man with one small law firm, but looking at it as, well, I know I need to hire people because I don't want to work 12 hours a day, 6 days a week or more. Finding law students now, training them up as law students so that when it's time, they either, you know, learn that we're not a good fit for each other, which has its own value, or they've learned that they do like what we do, and they've got enough experience that when it's time to start for full time, they're not starting from complete zero. Their training has been proportionate to the value provided. Like you've
Yeah.
graded up.
No, absolutely, and it goes to a point you made earlier, which I want to swing back to, which is the idea of a safe space for making mistakes. And this is so important. This is underrated, I think, and how important it is in the legal profession, because lawyers are, as you know, we are very well, we're failure averse, no question. We hate to fail. We
Mm-hmm.
hate getting things wrong. I actually think, if anything else, we're embarrassment averse. The one thing you must never do to a lawyer: make them look bad. Make a lawyer
Yes.
look bad, they will never forgive you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think, once again, this goes to the idea of why it's so hard. One thing I've been writing about and talking about for years is innovation in the law. And one of the reasons why it's so hard to innovate is that innovation has built into it a degree of failure. If you just say, I'm going to try something different, you're going to mess up. You're going to fall off the bike a number of times. And sometimes you're going to fall off the bike, people are going to look at you and they're going to laugh and point, ha ha, and you got to be able to deal with that, right? And if it worries you that, oh, I don't want to have to do that, well, you know what, pick your favorite billionaire, whether it's Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or Steve Jobs or whomever. These folks failed all the time and they messed up all the time, but that's how they got better at things. And once again, this comes back to the idea of, if you become frozen in routine and become frozen in the way we've always done things. This is something I'm having a discussion with right now with a client, which is trying to make some significant institutional changes. And I said, look, if we were starting this today for the first time ever, no one had ever done this process before in the law, and you were coming and you're tasked with coming up with a way to do it, is this what you would choose? This method, which kind of was cobbled together over the course of years, 50, 60, 100 years ago? Of course not. Of course, you would say, no, that's crazy. We're going to do it this way because it's rational and because it's in keeping with the best practices in technology and cultural realities of today. So that is a constant challenge, but again, also I think a constant opportunity for lawyers is to always look at what they're doing and say, if I wasn't already doing it this way, is this how I would start?
Right. And I mean, just the built up cruft. Croft. I forget how to actually say that word, but
Hmm.
you've just layered on process, and
Oh yeah.
occasionally coming in saying, "Do we actually need any of this?"
Mm.
And occasionally we do look at things. For years, I'd always had in our documents one medical power of attorney and then one authorization for all the doctors to talk to whomever it was.
Hmm.
And I realized, like, sure, we've always done it at two documents, but if we put them together as one document, the client's not impressed and probably a little more beleaguered if we send them 17 documents instead of 15. So the easier we can kind of make it for them to see what's there up front
Hmm.
and make it easy for them to read. And, the other thing I think about is, well, what about the poor law clerk who's going to be reading the things we submit for probate? Making sure, even though the forms that we normally start with, you're not really required to tell the court this provision in the will says to do this, but we make it a point of we're showing our work. We have done this. We're submitting something today. We promise we have done the required notices, and we've included. Here's the screenshot of the state of Texas website where we double checked, so you can see. Dear court clerk, we've did this. Here's the link, and it's just the screenshot that 10 years ago would have been not impossible to do on any computer, but just would have been two steps more difficult.
Yeah.
Here, look at section 3.1. This gives you all the verbiage we need.
Yeah.
And so they're not flipping through because, in a prior life called law school, I spent a summer at the probate courts having to check when somebody said, the will appoints this person, and I'd get to read through a 40-page will. And after a while, you just don't want to.
Yeah, had enough of that. No,
Right.
it's true, and it really points to, well, a couple of things. One is, again, going back to this idea of having concern for others, having others' interests in mind. And what does the client think when they open this up? What does the law clerk think when it's 4:45 on a Friday afternoon and you've dropped this on their desk, and it's like, oh, for the love really, really, right? And I've seen so much careless, reckless disregard committed by lawyers to people to whom they owe various duties of various kinds, that it just it shrivels the heart. But the other thing, to get back to your point about the ways of doing things, the calcification of procedures and systems and the law. If there's one thing that needs blowing up, and okay, there's lots, but one thing that really needs blowing up in the law, it's like the whole blue book thing, the
Mm-hmm.
whole idea that if you submit a factum to the court and the margin's off by like literally a quarter of an inch, they'll reject it and they'll sanction you and you'll get yelled at by the judge. And it's like, get over yourselves, right? What part of this has anything to do with justice? What part of this has anything to do with service and care for others? So that's where those are easy wins, right?
Yeah.
Honestly, those are easy wins that we can do right now.
Right. So as we start to close this down, one of the things I do want to talk about is the fear of failure. You mentioned innovation.
Mm,
And I think it's worth kind of dwelling on for a minute. For me personally, taking the small risks, whether or not they work, that's the only way we can move forward, whatever it looks like. Dear listener, taking the small risk, this is the part you need to know. Nobody, almost nobody's going to know that it was a failure other than you.
yeah.
But even knowing, look, this didn't work, at least we tried it, and it may spur some other thought that will work.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And the courage, frankly, is what it is. The courage required to do that is not insubstantial. Again, we could shorten lawyers' runway to that point if we changed our education and formation processes. But even without that in place, a lot of it is simply the willingness of a lawyer to stand up and say, I'm going to try something different, going to try something new. And there are examples of this. One of the pieces you mentioned that I wrote a little while ago was about the whole, returning to the office thing, right? And there's still, despite the fact that the overwhelming cultural decision has been, we ain't going back to the office, Jack. I'm sorry. Not 5 days a week, not 8 to 10 hours a day. That's not happening. Right? The Stanford prof who said we will never again see the number of people, the number of person hours in the office that we saw before. But when you look at law firms and you read the articles about law firms saying, well, we're going to expect people to come back to the office and we're going to do this and do that. And number one, there's no really good reason why someone should a lawyer needs to be in the office all the time. There never has been. It's entirely been about both the habits of the firm and the preferences of the partners, who, being lawyers, tend to be low trust, grabby, very inclined to want everybody access, arm's length access. But it is also about, what are you offering to people that would make them want to come into the office? Again, it's not just, oh, come to the office, here's your desk, here's a chair. I have a desk and chair at home. I can do my work at home. We've seen that. So, what can you offer people in terms of work enhancements, in terms of social enhancements, in terms of anything that makes their life at the office at least as attractive and ideally significantly more attractive than life at home? And again, the ability to visualize that and to and number one, the ability to visualize it, because that goes to the question of, if we weren't doing it this way before, would we do it now? And
Hmm.
secondly, the ability to go to your people, the people who work for you, and say, I don't know what matters to you, right? And again, admitting ignorance, it's a terrible faux pas for lawyers. But go to them and say, listen, I don't know what really matters to you. You're 10, 15, 20, 25 years younger than me. You're in a different situation. I got a nice home. I got a nice garden. I have an entire den I can spread out my stuff in. Maybe for all I know, you're in an apartment somewhere, and maybe it's a one bedroom and you got a baby screaming upstairs and a couple arguing next door. And I get that your life is different than mine. So tell me what matters to you in terms of helping you get your work done as productively as possible, moving forward in your career, developing new skills. A managing partner or a practice group leader who said that genuinely, face to face and with eye contact to a lawyer would blow their minds, because no one's doing it. And if you
Exactly.
did, you would change everything about your firm, you would change everything about your practice, and you would change a lot of lives for the better.
Yes. And so, last real question before we sign off, Jordan. What's one thing you're really excited about now that you see coming to us? Because we're not going to end on a down note.
Oh, and absolutely. I am very excited that we are starting to see finally a dovetailing of interests in the legal sector between what the public needs and what lawyers want. Because traditionally, it's just been what lawyers want, right? That's one of the either the benefits or the downsides of a self-governing profession, self-regulating profession. We are seeing, to a greater extent than ever, the voice of the public, the voice of the people, the voice of clients, and they are really making changes. And lawyers, especially younger ones, are listening. I speak to law schools all the time. I try to get at least once a month, to get on the Zoom horn now, and give a presentation to students. And the questions I get, and the interest I get, and the engagement, it's just so encouraging to me, because again, they are products of a different generation, different culture. And it's really incredibly encouraging to me to hear them and to see them saying, yeah, I know the way it's always been done. That has no interest for me. That holds no attraction for me. When I get there, we're going to do something different. And I am convinced that we're at the beginning of a groundswell of change in this profession, and it's going to reflect the groundswell of pressure and change coming from outside the profession. I really think there are such great days ahead of us here in the law.
Excellent. Jordan, what a wonderful place to leave off. If anybody's looking to find you, where can they find more of what you're doing now?
I guess online, and my website is law21.ca, and I write there not as often as I should, but I'm writing there. And on Twitter, where I probably spend a little bit too much time, Jordan Furlong. I'm pretty sure I'm one of three Jordan Furlongs on Twitter, and I think the other two are in Britain somewhere. So I don't know, whatever. Chances are, if you look for me on Twitter, you'll find me without too much difficulty.
Excellent. Jordan, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, John. Take care.
Thanks so much for listening. You can find more info on us and get your free white paper on client service at 5starcounsel.com. You can get in touch with me at john@5starcounsel.com. If you enjoyed the podcast, please subscribe wherever fine podcasts are found and leave us a review wherever you can.